Hello everyone and welcome to the 5th webinar in the CERDIP and ESTCP webinar series. My name is Jennifer Nyman. I am a Senior Engineer at Geosyntec Consultants in Oakland, California. I've been organizing the webinar series on behalf of CERDIP and ESTCP, and I will be facilitating today's call. The webinar will consist of a brief overview of CERDIP and ESTCP by Dr. Jim Galvin, followed by a preview of the upcoming webinars in CERDIP and ESTCP's webinar series. Following Jim's opening remarks, we will transition to the technical portion of the webinar. The webinar today features 3 speakers on energy audits. First, Scott Clark of Hydrogeologic will introduce the topic by providing background information on energy audits from the DoD perspective. He will be followed by 2 longer presentations featuring speakers from industry today. Oliver Davis from Concept 3D will discuss the simuwatt Energy Auditor, an electronic auditing tool with geometry capture, followed by a short question and answer session. Oliver will be followed by Cara Brill from FirstFuel Software, who will also give a 25-minute presentation on rapid building assessment for energy efficiency, followed by another short question and answer session. We will conclude the webinar today with an interactive question and answer session for all of our speakers. Today's webinar will be listen only. You may submit questions by using the chat box on the left-hand portion of your screen. Note that you don't have to wait until the question and answer period to submit your questions. In fact, we encourage you to submit questions in advance of that session. With so many attendees on today's call, it's logistically challenging to open all of the lines for oral questions. Therefore, the phone lines will remain listen only throughout the presentation. If you run into any technical difficulties involving the presentation or the call-in line, please contact the ReadyTalk technical support, as noted in the meeting confirmation email. And with that, I would like to introduce today Dr. Jim Galvin, who is the CERDIP ESTCP Program Manager for Energy and Water. Jim is on detail from the Department of Energy National Renewable Energy Laboratory to develop and implement this CERDIP ESTC program. Jim?
Thank you, Jennifer. Welcome, everyone. As the Program Manager for the Energy and Water Program, I'd like to provide some context for the webinar. About 24 years ago, Congress established the Strategic Environmental Research and Development Program in order to address high-priority environmental issues facing the Department of Defense. The program primarily looks at implementing advanced technologies, but starting with fundamental research. Later, the department also established the Environmental Security Technology Certification Program, which is a follow-on program to CERDIP. And in this program, we demonstrate cost-effective technologies in both the environmental and the energy spaces. We primarily look at leveraging past investments in order to emphasize technology transition and provide all of the conditions needed to accept and use these technologies in the Department of Defense. There are 5 program areas in the CERDIP and ESTCP program. The Environmental Restoration Program seeks to mitigate issues and prevent or restore past problems. Munitions response deals with munitions that have been buried on land and undersea. And then we have a holistic approach to resource conservation and climate change, and also look at weapon systems and platforms and things like chemicals and solvents and how they impact the department environmentally. Within the Energy and Water Program in particular, we seek to demonstrate innovative technologies in a real-world setting. We're primarily looking across 3 areas. We emphasize microgrids. You can see the picture in the upper left are the components of a microgrid at Fort Bliss. Also, building technologies. The picture in the middle is a HVAC system that we installed some energy efficiency measures into. And then at the bottom, you can see the solar panels representing the distributed generation and those aspects of the environmental and energy certification, technology certification program. The Energy and Water program only looks at ESTCP projects, and today we will focus on 2 innovative energy auditing technologies. Thank you. I'll return this back to Jennifer.
Thank you very much, Jim. It's now my pleasure to introduce Scott Clark, who is a mechanical engineer with Hydrogeologic in New York.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. So everybody may be wondering why DoD is going to be so concerned with energy audits anyway. Why is it that we'd really be that concerned? Why would we need 2 different tools to try and take care of things? So as you can see here, DoD's facility and operational energy cost $18.8 billion last year. And where we're really concerned is with the slice of pie that's 22% of that overall budgeting, which is $4.1 billion. The pie chart on the right shows the breakdown of that use, the majority of which is electricity, and then the other big slices are natural gas and fuel oil. So combined, that makes up about 90% of the overall energy consumed just via what we have for facility energy. And obviously, the more we can reduce those slices of pie, the more we can reduce the budget, and energy auditing is really going to be one of the best ways that we can try and take that on. So why would we actually want to audit? Now, the ASHRAE procedures for commercial building energy audits say that the objectives are to identify and develop modifications that can reduce energy use and or the operating costs of buildings. So while those are relatively obvious for DoD, they are also applicable because of the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007, which requires that every facility has to be audited at least once every 4 years, or really 25% of all covered spaces have to be audited annually. And really the other reason is that just like any particular cost or profit center, energy really needs to be managed with the same emphasis that you would give anything else that is going to be a cost or profit, regardless of DoD or if it's going to be within private industry. So that's really something that we want to take a look at that, and auditing really helps us put the best foot forward. So really, what are some of the benefits of audits? And for those of you who have been through this process previously, this may not be anything new, but for some who are new to the game, the biggest idea may be that energy auditing really gives you a list of no-cost adjustments that you can make to the facilities that you already have. So your equipment may be able to be tweaked slightly, or you can make slight adjustments to behaviors or how things are being run that really involve no capital costs whatsoever. And that can provide immediate benefits and immediate paybacks for you and your facilities team. Additionally, you get some short-term retrofit options, something that you can do near-term within the next couple of years to have some paybacks that will really show something within the next several months. And more importantly, to also help give you an action plan moving forward. That way you can really see how can we spend our dollars going forward, how can we really replace some equipment that we may not have done just yet, or replace things before they have failed. And also you can use that to help you address comfort and code issues within your building. So if you've had a lot of hot and cold calls, you don't have your minimum ventilation in place, you can try and take care of a number of those things and save energy all at the same time. And really one of the other benefits can be that as you review things like lighting levels, noise, you can try and go ahead and meet some opportunities for adherence to general standards and guidelines that are put out either by ASHRAE or ISNA. So what are the different types of audits that we see? For the most part, they're going to be those that are defined by ASHRAE. That's how we would go through types. That seems to be the universal standard that everybody follows. And a level 1 type audit is what's considered a walkthrough audit, and it's very much that where your energy auditor is going to go ahead, gather information by walking through the building, but also performing a utility bill analysis, hopefully ahead of their site survey. They may make multiple surveys, but typically with a walkthrough they'll just make one. What they'll do is they're then going to go ahead and try to develop some ECMs, or energy conservation measures. They're going to discover what they can do and issue a report and some recommendations that are going to include some of those short-term and long-term options we discussed previously. The level 2 audit is the most common, and it's the one that's required for federal facilities. And that's also going to involve some potential trend logging and system analysis, a little bit more advanced on your ECM calculations. And then we also move into level 3, which is an investment grade audit. And this is typically something that will also include energy modeling. It will include detailed trend logging that can be very detailed as far as determining run times, occupancy levels, lighting levels. Those are the most expensive and are normally only reserved for significant capital improvements. So really, we've got a couple of rules of thumb to look at as you think about energy audits. Obviously, the time to complete is going to vary with the level of the audit and also the building size. And on average, a level 2 audit will take about 60 hours. Costs can vary depending on your building as well and the complexity, from 12 cents up to 50 cents per square foot. I know that what we've seen with an average 50,000 square foot building within DoD, normally those costs run somewhere around $9,000 for a level 2. And normally another rule of thumb is that if you're going to get an audit for a smaller facility, that audit should not normally exceed 10% of whatever your annual utility bill is going to be. We don't always see that within DoD, namely because we only have one central meter, but if you have a smaller facility, that's certainly something to keep in mind. So one of the things that really are important to consider as far as any audit considerations you may have is the scope and level of detail that's really going to be required for your building. If you're not sure where you want to go, a walkthrough is the most inexpensive place to start and may give you some immediate paybacks. Also, the amount of time that you have, because you may need results that are going to be very quickly. You need them immediately, and you just won't have the time for a detailed level 3 audit. And also, of course, the costs, because everybody's concerned about costs and what we may have. So how much can you afford as far as a level for an audit? Maybe it makes sense to start with a level 1 and use any savings gleaned there. You can use those moving forward to try and fund a level 2 or a level 3 audit. So really, to sort of roll things up for today, DoD has 300,000 buildings in their inventory, and obviously we need to have 25% of those audited every year. So that's going to be a really big chunk of things, and so that's an important place for us to focus on both budget and on time. So we're always looking for ways to do things better, faster, and cheaper, especially the auditing portion of things. And part of what we're going to be seeing today are 2 different technologies from both simuwatt or Concept 3D and FirstFuel. They have 2 different approaches but really try to get to the same results. So thank you for tuning in for that today. Jennifer?
Thanks, Scott, for a very interesting introduction. Our next speaker is Oliver Davis. He's the co-founder of Concept 3D. It has the mission of helping people make more informed decisions by tying virtual representation to physical ones. He's led the company's growth from inception and has 18 years of management experience. And before Oliver kicks off, I would like to remind our audience to submit questions by using the chat box on the left-hand portion of your screen. Oliver?
Thanks, Jennifer, and thanks for mentioning my 18 years of experience. I'm feeling very old and wicked today, so appreciate that. Happy holidays to everyone. Scott, thanks so much for the overview. That was great. And today we're going to talk through the simuwatt application and development that's been a collaboration between NREL and Concept 3D. Concept 3D is an 8-year-old company based in Boulder, Colorado, and we are a company that has its roots in 3-dimensional modeling and data aggregation. And happy to talk through and spend some time on what we've done with ESTCP. Let's see. So what we've done with simuwatt is a on-site building walkthrough application for building audits, and our energy audits. And the driver behind this is the ESA 2007 mandate. The driver behind funding this application development, which again was a collaboration between, or is a collaboration between NREL and Concept 3D, is to reduce the costs of on-site audits, and which representing once out every 4-year requirements, and with the Section 432 requirements to perform audits on site. What we saw as a main driver is to improve the quality of these audits through improving the data collection today we see really no standard for collecting data with different tools from spreadsheets to clipboards to different modeling applications on the back end. And with that, having non-standard data that really can't be aggregated. So what we've seen in the field is that ESCOs and others are just handing off a CD or a report, and that either gets filed or left behind, and that data is never used again. And so we're focusing on not checking a box anymore and being able to reuse that data for future audits. And then tied to that is the reporting side. So we don't want to effectively love them and leave them with an energy audit. We want that data to be used down the road every 4 years, or even in between those 4 years, as you're looking to improve the efficiency of buildings. So our project objectives were to combine a series of applications that were developed between Concept 3D and NREL. So Concept 3D started working with NREL 4 years ago in developing a building component library, which is a library of tens of thousands of building components with energy conservation measures tied to that data set. Those measures can be customized, and there are generic measures as well. So we started that development in building this data set and then tying that to energy modeling. So then we said, well, what do we do with this information? And we decided to go ahead and jointly develop through a cooperative research agreement under DOE, where Concept 3D invested money to develop the ability to capture information on a mobile device and convert that geometry and data to the building. And that building information then would tie to a building energy model. So we took that with NREL's energy auditing know-how and built simuwatt, which is a tablet-based application that allows the auditor to draw the spaces, draw the buildings, associate information to those spaces, and with the intent of speeding up the energy audit and improving the data and backend. So with that, what we did is demonstrated a tablet-based software application with Apple as an Apple iOS device, and effectively lowering the cost of energy audits, and again, as mentioned, storing the data in a reusable format. So using multiple functions and capabilities to do this, we have, as you look in the upper left, tying in other data sources from Portfolio Manager and others to the actual for benchmarking, and then the building component library as mentioned earlier, and tying that into the actual tablet itself. So as you're walking through a building, storing information, associating the actual building components that have values, and then on the output, creating an energy model and custom report and measures. So as we look at integrating these technologies, one of the great benefits of building this application from the outset was 2.5, 3 years ago, was that we saw that tablet devices were becoming much more common, and such that auditors and others would have this medium at their disposal. So tied to that and how it works is that the auditor would take this application with a simuwatt energy auditor, and as they walk through a space, they can take a floor plan, they could even take a picture of that floor plan and layer it on top of Google Maps, and then as they're walking through, they're pulling components and information from the building component library that tie to those spaces. And these spaces could be office spaces, conference rooms, you name it, with everything in that library from occupants to computers to different types of lighting, plug loads, you name it, that tie to ultimately the energy model. So as you walk through, you're creating geometry effectively with the application, and you're rapidly collecting data of those building assets. So as you complete that, you output and create an energy model, allowing you to calibrate the building and create a baseline and actually have geometry from all that you can build from. From there, you can do your life cycle analysis, identify your measures, and auto-generate a report. So where we were focused on saving money and time was heavily on the front end with the data collection, but also on the back end in having an automatically generated report, as well as the ability to customize that data as needed on a per building and per campus basis. So we take that baseline model, associate different measures to that model, calibrate it accordingly, and now output to a report that, again, starts as a report specific to that building, but then you can even add more detail with various measures through the parametric analysis tool and the building component library. So these are some examples of different models that we created at multiple sites, including NSAM, the airport, Tyndall, Fort Bliss, and these are just examples of the actual building models. So the NSAM building 330, here's the building that we actually did the control study with. So the what we started with was a baseline working with a Tier 1 ESCO and working with their current methodology and processes and tools. We took a 75,000 square foot, 3-story building and said, let's look at your current methodology and process with clipboard spreadsheets, and then sending that information to an energy modeling group and comparing that against the simuwatt workflow. So this building included multiple space types, and the benefits that we saw were, one, surveying and exporting the energy model in a very short period without requiring the expertise that are required today. So today, this ESCO and others that we've worked with have presented that multiple parties have to be involved to do the work to get this final output from the front end all the way to the back end. We identified 5 measures with simuwatt with an average payback of 3.7 years and 10% energy consumption savings of $20,000 per year. With that, we have ability to simplify these complex properties with input control. So within the application, you can actually draw out your systems, create multiple floors and zones per floor, so those can be specific per floor. Or if you have floors that are similar, you can actually copy and replicate each zone and each floor. So you can copy those floor plans, copy the information per floor plan, and speed up that process on a building by building basis. So we saw were significant savings over existing processes between Air Force, Army, and Navy. As mentioned, we did a blind head-to-head study with this Tier 1 ESCO. We saw 53% savings compared to level 2 audits. And we reused this, and the big part of the savings, as you'll see in this graph, was tied to reuse of the information with a $1.28 billion savings over 25 years. We based this on a 20-cent per square foot cost for auditing, and that's a median value that's from an NREL DoD database of historic cost data. So as you look at simuwatt, we learned a lot through this experience, and what we learned is, in large part, we can save a significant amount of time and savings in improving the quality of the information, standardizing the information, and creating geometry in the application and for the client. We also recognize that there's value in having other output types. And so through this experience, we've incorporated XML output, CSV output, Excel output, and other formats to make the application even more flexible. So as Scott mentioned earlier, the types of audits vary in degrees, as you'll also hear from FirstFuel. And we recognize that for an on-site data collection, from an on-site data collection perspective, there's a lot of value in having the capability to not just create energy models, but also have the ability to create spreadsheets and other outputs that will allow you to quickly do calculations and with or without the geometric functions. So as we look at simuwatt for the longer term, we will have an application that supports levels 1 through 3, ASHRAE levels 1 through 3 energy audit requirements. Pardon me. The relevant to DoD is the savings, of course, as mentioned. The compliance for ESA 2007, Section 432, which mandates a walkthrough, and then specific location-based data for agencies' buildings. So all of this is referenceable and geo-specific, and it can be used for reuse down the road anytime, whether you're doing a retrofit, post-audit, or need to reference the information for your the next audit in 4 years. So relevancy again is that this is through a partnership with NREL. simuwatt is a collaboration which incorporated a great amount of depth and know-how for energy audits and modeling and processes. And simuwatt is included in an INL report for DOE in Q4 this year, and we have active inquiries from other agencies as well. And as noted here, we can facilitate first-party audits at DoD. So in conclusion, this is a collaboration as noted. simuwatt provides a mobile application, will be web as well, with standardized data collection and reuse, help DoD meet their ESA 2007 requirements, significant savings in audits using simuwatt, and particularly as you're looking at repeat audits. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We've had a number of questions, and so we'll have a brief question and answer period now. And please, to the audience, do continue to submit your questions with the chat box on the left-hand side of the screen. We've had a few different questions about the readiness of this product and its availability for use. Can offices use it now either as a demonstration tool or for full use? Oliver, are you there to answer some questions? You might be on mute.
Yeah, hi, sorry, I was on mute. So we are completing commercial field trials right now, and so what we've done since ESTCP is we've brought this out to commercial parties. We can certainly, we'd like to present or talk with, if you have any requests for on-site trials or would like to use the application, my contact information is here. Feel free to contact me and we can talk through doing a specific trial for and demo for your site.
Okay, great. And what kind of training is required to use this auditing tool?
That's a great question. So for ESTCP, we included a training period with our ESCO partner, and that was about a half day of classroom training, and then we went straight to the field after that. So and that was our first training. So my expectation is about 4 hours of classroom training, and then you'll be in the field using the application.
Okay. And how is the collection of utility bills automated? Seems like a very time-consuming task.
So through the ESTCP program, there was manual entry of utility bills. We are working on simplifying that with being able to import those bills through bulk uploading with our next version.
Okay. And is energy modeling required for this tool?
So with the application that we demonstrated with ESTCP, it was. With our first version, it is not.
Okay. And a couple of final questions. We had a question asking how ECM costs are determined.
So ECM costs are determined by the user. So the user actually enters the cost values. Okay. And we don't make assumptions based on region or otherwise. So they would actually create those themselves.
And is it only for tablet? What type of hardware is needed?
So we have this version for ESTCP was iOS only for Apple devices, but we will have a web version in January.
Okay, great. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Oliver, in response to those questions?
No, I don't think so. There's, there's a question about availability, and please feel free to contact me. My contact information is here. RT Weber, our VP of Sales and Business Development, is here as well. And I'll make sure that any inquiry is handled appropriately, and we'd love to work with you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Oliver.
Thank you.
And Oliver will be available at the end of this webinar as well to address questions. So if there are additional questions on the tool that Oliver discussed, please do feel free to submit them, and we can get back to them at the end of the webinar. Our third and last speaker today is Cara Brill. She is a Client Project Manager for FirstFuel Software in Massachusetts. Since 2012, she has led many of FirstFuel's utility and government client projects, including this one for DoD. And she received her degrees from the University of Richmond. Cara?
Thanks, Jennifer. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. As Jennifer mentioned, my name is Cara Brill. I'm a Client Project Manager at FirstFuel, and I managed our DoD ESTCP project. Today I'm going to talk about what FirstFuel is and how data can help you achieve your energy savings goals. First, I'll give a little background on our company and what exactly analytics-enabled energy efficiency means. Then I'll talk about some of the audit findings from our DoD ESTCP project and specifically look at how our services were used at Fort Bliss. I'll wrap up by covering the lessons we learned during the demonstration and then where we're headed. So what's FirstFuel? FirstFuel is an energy intelligence company. At a high level, we combine deep experience with data analytics, building science, and enterprise software as a service to make up a unique energy analytics platform. To dive a little bit deeper here, what I mean is that our data analytics team, comprised of 8 PhDs, pair their extensive modeling knowledge with our experienced building engineers that have backgrounds in walking buildings and conducting energy audits. And then our software as a service team is able to combine that unique expertise in an online platform. And this platform presents easy to follow and easy to engage with energy information and energy actions for our customers' buildings. Utilities and large building portfolio owners, like the Department of Defense and the General Services Administration, employ our services. And we're currently deployed at more than 20 large customers. FirstFuel's platform addresses the life cycle of energy efficiency. And what I mean by life cycle is that we work across this energy efficiency spectrum, and we're able to help our customers at any stage in the process to achieve their energy goals. We can work with agencies that oversee or have customers with large portfolios of buildings to screen those buildings. Screening buildings here means that we're using our tool to identify the buildings in the portfolio that have the highest potential for saving energy. And then once those highest potential buildings are identified and selected by our customers, we then conduct audits to deliver detailed energy information to the building owners. And I'll talk a little bit more shortly about how we deliver that information. Once we've delivered the results, we often work with the agencies and the building owners to implement those identified energy savings projects. And then, once the projects are completed, Our service has the ability to continuously monitor ongoing energy consumption and savings in a weather normalized fashion. Weather normalized means that we're able to look at how the building is performing compared to that baseline audit period by taking weather out of the equation. So one of the tools that I just talked about in that life cycle of energy efficiency was our remote audits, and that's the tool that we focus on for our ESTCP demonstration. Our audit solution allows us to work with the customer using minimal data inputs, such as weather data, the building's address, and its energy data, and then in this case, a building information survey. Our analytics use these 4 inputs to come up with a breakdown of how the building is using energy and building-specific energy conservation recommendations. By using the building's actual energy data, we're able to make building-specific recommendations. So for example, we're able to see operational inefficiencies like uncontrolled heating that's happening during the winter, and capital inefficiencies such as older lighting that's been deployed in the building. Our recommendations are targeted at getting that customer to act on what's happening in their building specifically, and we present the findings via a web conference as well as through online portal and PDF reports. Now diving a bit more into our ESTCP project. So FirstFuel started working with ESTCP back in the fall of 2011. We developed a demonstration that was aimed at helping the DoD overcome its challenges of identifying energy savings opportunity across its very vast and very diverse portfolio of buildings. Our demonstration focused on remote audits compared to on-site audits as a way to solve this problem. In addition, we looked at the side-by-side remote audit versus on-site audit comparison and set up the demonstration to focus on a number of different building types that are unique to the DoD and on DoD sites that are scattered throughout the U.S. climate zones. We ended up choosing 11 sites. We got the data for these 100 buildings across these 11 sites from the site's meter data management systems and ran the data through our analytics platform to determine the building's energy use profile and the detailed energy conservation measures, the process that I talked about on the last slide. So one thing to point out here is that these types that I have listed, types 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, the type 2 through 5 buildings are buildings that were considered new to us at the time. FirstFuel had not conducted remote energy assessments on these barracks and warehouses and rec centers, mostly because we hadn't had exposure to them since they are pretty unique to the DoD. FirstFuel worked closely with ESTCP to define the performance objectives of the demonstration, and similarly, we work with all of our customers at the start of each project to make sure we define the right criteria for measuring success. With this demonstration, we focus on 3 main performance objectives: the cost, accuracy, and scalability of our remote audits and how they compare to on-site audits. And in a few slides, I'm going to go into some more detail about these and the results. Oops, sorry about that. So here's an overview of how our workflow played out with each of the DoD installations that partnered with us. Once FirstFuel collected the necessary data and completed the remote assessments, our building engineers presented the results to the site via a web conference. Each energy site manager was able to review the findings during the conference and provide feedback about the assessments during the calls. And at this time, we also showed them how to use the online portal. Sites were then given access to the web portal so they could review the results on their own online, manage their portfolio of buildings, and track their measures. And then for those sites that had the ability to send us data after the audit, we offered remote monitoring, which again is our service that allows us to measure how their building's electricity consumption compares to the baseline period in a weather normalized fashion. An important part of the demonstration, like I just mentioned, was comparing our audits to the on-site process. So while we conducted this workflow on the 100 remote audits, we also had a third party conducting on-site ASHRAE Level 2 audits on a subset of the facilities involved in our demonstration. The engineering firm walked the buildings and then prepared ASHRAE Level 2 audits, And during this process, we learned that one of the big benefits of the remote approach is not only that our remotes can be completed more quickly than on-site audits, because we can do the remote audits concurrently, meaning we can do many buildings at once. On-site audits generally can't do that. They have to take full days to walk through just one building, and then they have to go back and prepare the written report. And there's also much less hassle involved for the remote audits because the energy site manager doesn't need to chaperone anyone on site for multiple days. Here I have an example of one of the types of data that we provide on our portal. We have an image of one of the views on our portfolio dashboard, and we're showing here 100 buildings that we looked at throughout the course of the demonstration. Each bubble represents a DoD building, and it is sized based on the annual KWH savings potential. So as you can see, we identified over 8 million KWH in savings, which equates to just over $800,000 across these 100 buildings. And each portfolio or site manager that we worked with had a similar view for their buildings at their installation. And here's another way of looking at the savings that we identified across the portfolio. One of the key values that we've learned since we started these portfolio level deployments is that analytics-enabled energy efficiency provides a way to look at building savings opportunities to help with planning and targeting. So what I mean is instead of having to manually extract key information out of each audit that's often in a PDF report and then come up with an Excel-based plan on your own, the Energy Site Manager is able to use analytics to approach this problem in an efficient manner. They can use these audits and the results as a roll-up to plan which buildings they want to go after first. So for example, if I'm looking to get the most savings per square foot at my site, looking at this graph here on the right would tell me that I want to look more closely at my headquarters, which are the type 1 buildings, and my rec centers, which are the type 4 buildings. Now that you have a sense of the portfolio level findings offered through analytics-enabled energy efficiency, I'm going to dig a bit deeper into one of our specific sites that we worked with, which is Fort Bliss. Fort Bliss was a great site for us to work with on our demonstration for a few reasons, and these are also reasons why I've chosen to talk about them in a bit more detail here. One is that they have very aggressive goals for net zero energy, water, and waste by 2020. And piloting our remote audit service has been a way for them to identify concrete opportunities to reduce their energy usage and meet their net zero goal. They also have a wide range of building types, both that met our types goals and also represent a mix of new buildings and old buildings. Additionally, many of their buildings have advanced meters that have been deployed for at least a year, which wasn't too common back when we started this for the other demonstration sites. Their site is spread across a huge area in Texas and New Mexico, making them in a climate zone that was rather new to us at the time of the demonstration. Finally, their huge population offered a challenge that is very unique to the DoD and something we weren't used to before we started this demonstration, in that many of the buildings aren't always occupied throughout the year due to deployments or different purposes of the buildings. This is a physical fitness center at Fort Bliss where we identified 24% electricity savings. And I want to point out that one of the advantages of our process is that because we're analyzing the building's energy data across a long year period, we're easily able to pick up on operational savings opportunities that are often missed by that 1 or 2 day on-site walkthrough of the building. In this building, our top savings measure is related to adjusting the building's HVAC scheduling, which is a low-cost savings opportunity, and here it represents a payback of 3 to 6 months. And it's hard to see here, but the image on the left is an example of the recommendation page that accompanies each building's analysis on the portal. Here we're providing details of the energy savings measure on each line, and then when you click on it in the portal, you get a drop-down, and you're able to see a lot more description about the details of the recommendation, and what the data is that's driving the recommendations specifically. We're also providing on the first part of it energy savings and dollar savings and the range of cost and payback for each measure. The next building at Fort Bliss here that I wanted to talk about is a vehicle maintenance shop. This is a building that we found was very common to the DoD and was very new to us at the time. Again, we identified significant low-cost operational savings opportunities. And when we're presenting these findings, both the operational and the retrofit savings opportunities on the calls with the site managers, we make sure that we review the story and the data that's leading us to these recommendations. So here, we spent a lot of time going over the graphs and the rest of the analysis that pointed to suspected simultaneous heating and cooling. That was definitely happening in this building based on feedback that we were getting from the comments by the energy site manager. And we also spent time reviewing the additional HVAC operating and scheduling issues because we knew that these operational opportunities would be a quick and low-cost savings opportunity for the site. When we started working with Fort Bliss, like many of the other sites we worked with, the energy site manager went into this with a healthy level of skepticism about what energy analytics could offer. He ended up finding that the analytics-enabled process found valuable cost and energy savings opportunities across most of the buildings. Also, that the recommendations were actionable in a way that he could use them for future planning as well as for the planning for the net zero goals since 2020 is quickly approaching. Another point here that we found and found on a few other sites as well was the unexpected benefit of doing these audits using their advanced meter data. Before our demonstration, there had been little to no analysis of many of the building's advanced meters, and this valuable data was just sitting there without getting much value out of it. So our demonstration ended up adding significant value to that previously untouched data stream and also helped point out where there were opportunities to improve upon their metering system and data collection process. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, ESTCP and FirstFuel collaboratively came up with these demonstration objectives. Throughout the demonstration, we were collecting the data to help us measure our progress toward meeting our performance objectives, and these three major ones were cost, scalability, and accuracy, and how these three ones compared to on-site audits. On cost, we were aiming to have the audits completed at a price equal to or less than $3,000, and we achieved that target. Second, with scalability, we were aiming to complete the audits in a certain time frame compared to on-site audits, and we were really pleased that we were able to come up with a conclusion where we were completing remote audits in 15 to 16% of the time compared to the traditional approach. This means that our audits can offer huge time and cost savings for the installations because the staff doesn't have to be involved as extensively to schedule the audits, and facilities aren't being interrupted with walkthroughs. For our accuracy metric, we established 3 criteria for success here. 2 we met very cleanly, and 1 we fell a little shy. We fell a bit short on the criteria of matching ECMs between the on-site audits and our remote audits in the administration buildings, but we were also able to identify a number of additional recommendations that were missed by the on-site audits. And that's generally because we have a real advantage of being able to look at the data over a 365-day period and look at how the building is responding to weather throughout that period as well, whereas the on-site auditors are just there for 1 or 2 days. And we also hit our goals for finding similar ECMs to the on-site audits in the building types that were new to us, so the 2 through 5 barracks and warehouses and facilities with lighter process load buildings. Overall, we found that we met the good majority of our goals, and along the way we also learned some very valuable lessons about our process and how we can assist the DoD in meeting their energy goals with these remote audits. So speaking of lessons learned, the high-level goal of the FirstFuel's ESTCP project was to prove the technical value of our tool, and we considered the project successful because we met that objective. One of the big lessons learned was the challenges around meter data management at DoD sites and how we were collecting the data from the DoD sites. Many of the sites, like I said before, weren't using the data in a valuable way yet, and some of them hadn't even looked at their data. And so once we took a look at the data, we often uncovered some issues that led to some delays in our ability to complete the remote audits. But that was back in 2012 and 2013, and I've gotten the impression that this has come a long way since then. Once we were able to overcome these data challenges, one of the next lessons we learned was how we could provide a lot of valuable in an actionable way for the energy site managers to use the recommendations that we came up with. We learned about how our tool can be used to analyze a wide variety of building types and not just the offices and schools that we were used to doing before this project started. We also learned that our audits can be used to conduct audits that are 6 times faster and 3 times less expensive than the traditional on-site approach, which can lead to significant cost savings all around. Finally, we learned that our ability to provide portfolio-level views for better targeting and planning is a significant advantage compared to on-site audits. And now that this approach in comparison to on-site audits has been validated, we're deploying our tool in a way that focuses on measure implementation. In conclusion, our work with the DoD and our other customers has helped prove that analytics-enabled energy efficiency provides valuable, actionable information for parties interested in portfolio-level and building-level information. Using analytics to conduct energy audits offers a quicker and cheaper solution compared to the traditional on-site approach, while also identifying low-cost operational savings opportunities that help to achieve aggressive savings targets. We see great potential for analytics-enabled energy efficiency within DoD, and we're pleased that ESTCP does too. Thanks for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this project with you.
Thank you very much, Cara. And if anyone needs her contact information, it's here on this slide. We've received a number of questions about this tool. The first is about the amount of historic data. What type of historic data and how many years of it do you need?
So we need 12 months worth of electric consumption data in interval format. So usually that means 60, 30, or 15-minute intervals across 365 days. Okay. And can you say more about what kinds of efficiency measures the data can help identify? Can the data detect details like failed heating and chilled water valves or old lighting equipment? Yes, so our analytics come up with a breakdown of how the building is using energy to the building's 7 major end uses. So we're looking at the heating, ventilation, pumps, cooling, lighting, and MISC, which is usually data center or computer process loads. From there, we're able to come up with retrofit recommendations, which tell us or allow us to provide information about, let's say, if the lighting vintage is old or the chillers need to be replaced. And we're also looking at how the data is telling us that the building is responding to weather and occupancy, and that's where we come up with our operational savings recommendations. And those are recommendations such as adjusting the HVAC scheduling, making sure you're not operating on weekends, and other operational type improvements. Okay. And we had a few questions about the comparison between the on-site audits and the remote audits. What were the types of issues that the on-site audits found that the remote audits missed, and vice versa? So a lot of times the on-site audits would find capital-intensive measures that had to do with equipment issues that were missed by the data, because if something isn't working, that means that our data is not picking up on it. And then we were often able to find issues where the building was operating when it shouldn't be, and the on-site auditors had no way of knowing that.
Okay. And can the software be used if the building is not metered?
No.
Okay. Are these audits ready and available for wider use?
Yes. So the GSA, the General Services Administration, currently uses our audits to meet their energy auditing requirements, and they are ready to be used more widely throughout the DoD, and we are deployed with over 20 other commercial customers.
Okay. And did you look at the follow-through rate on the identified ECMs? And what was that?
You know, we didn't. At that point, we were really focused on the technology validation, and our next goal is to look at follow-through rates and measure implementation.
I see. So you haven't. We also had a question about whether there was any discrepancy between the on-site validation and the submitted data and answers. Did you look at that?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I don't exactly understand.
The question was, have you seen any discrepancy between the information that the building managers are providing and the on-site validation?
No.
In other words, what's the sort of the fidelity of the survey data? Have you found it to be accurate?
Yeah, so we oftentimes do find that the survey data can be incorrect, and that's why having the webinar with the site manager is really valuable. For example, a few times we had some information about their lighting systems that were provided to us that just wouldn't fit in our model. They were saying that they had certain lighting and it just didn't make sense with the data that we were seeing. And so we would have a conference call with them and show them what we were coming up with and ask them if they were sure that this lighting was correct, and they realized that they were reporting incorrectly.
I see. And what are your plans for expanding the building types?
If we have customers that have additional building types, we are eager to do that.
Okay, great. And Oliver, are you still on the line? Could we have a few questions that are directed to both speakers at this time?
Yes.
Great. So one question that came up a few times for both speakers were about security concerns. Have there been security concerns with data storage during your projects? And a similar question moving forward to wider use.
Sure. So we can store data locally through this process, and as well, we didn't have real data concerns through the through ESTCP. In working with NREL, that was certainly a big benefit as well, having a lab associated with an agency tied to the project is a big advantage. So as we look forward, we are looking at solutions to store data in the cloud, and we can do that securely. It's really an agency-specific consideration. So how we store it is not as much a concern as working through the agency to make sure that's approved and sanctioned. But again, we can provide data locally as needed through multiple outputs. So if we want to not store it on the cloud or share it on the cloud, we can go to kind of a traditional delivery mechanism as needed.
Okay, thanks, Oliver. Kara, can you address that question as well?
Yeah, so during the project, our security concerns didn't come up. We're storing the data the way that met our security requirements and the DoD security requirements. And before each customer deployment now, we work with the customer to ensure that all of their security concerns are met with how we store our data.
Okay, great, thank you. we had an additional question for Oliver after that question and answer session completed, and that was about the whether an internet connection is needed for the software during the field survey, or can it be offline?
It can be offline.
Okay.
So
Great.
Just to extend that the answer a little bit further, we can. There are certain access to the building component library is somewhat limited right now without having an online connection, but we provide a set amount of components and data in the offline version, which allows you to complete your audit as needed.
Thank you. And then there have been a couple more questions for Cara about gas and fossil fuel data. Can you speak a little bit more about how you use that data, and does FirstFuel use historical natural gas meter data as well?
Yeah, so when available, the only requirement is for our tools that we have the electricity consumption data on an interval basis, but when available, we also take in the natural gas or other thermal fuel sources. And oftentimes that's not available on an interval basis, so we can provide an analysis that's done on monthly thermal data and pair that with the electricity consumption ECMs as well.
Okay. Thank you. And I think at this point that we've addressed most of the questions from the audience. Thanks to both of our speakers. I'll give you just one last opportunity to provide any comments or the most important takeaway message from your presentation. Oliver, would you like to go first?
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. Thank you again for your time, everyone, today, and it's great to have such a broad audience prior to the holidays. Simuwatt is providing a set of applications to perform on-site audits in a rapid, accurate way with a standardized data set that is shareable and certainly provides cost efficiencies and time savings and a set of capabilities that haven't ever been available on a single application set in the past. And we're excited to be here and hopefully work with some of you in the future. So thanks again.
Thanks, Oliver. Cara?
Yeah, thank you everyone for your time today, as Oliver said, especially before the holidays and busy travel time. FirstFuel has a platform that we've developed since the start of our ESTCP project that addresses the life cycle of energy efficiency. Our audit platform is currently deployed with the GSA to help them meet their auditing requirements, and we're really looking forward to the opportunity to help additional federal agencies like the Department of Defense to continue to improve upon the audit process.
Thank you. And on behalf of CERTIP and ESTCP, I'd like to thank both Oliver and Cara as well as Scott for his introduction, and also thank you all for attending today's webinar. As a reminder, the presentation and the audio will be archived for future reference on the CERTIP and ESTCP webpage. And the next webinar is on January 8th, and that will be a webinar on DNAPL source zone management. And the link to information about that webinar is shown here on this slide. It will feature two distinguished speakers, Dr. Paul Johnson as well as Dr. Chuck Newell from GSI. So we hope you can also join us in January to learn about that. And as a reminder, there will be a brief survey that comes up after you complete the webinar, and please do take a moment to complete that survey when the webinar ends. And this concludes today's webcast. Thank you, everyone.